up on our breaking news, Brooke Singman of Fox News Digital has discovered exclusively that the FBI is now investigating the former CIA Director John Brennan and the former FBI Director James Comey in conjunction with the genesis of the Russia investigation. This comes after the CIA declassified last week a report into how that all came about. Let's bring in our panel to talk more about this. Annie Linskey, the White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal, USA Today White House correspondent Francesca Chambers, and Josh Holmes, co-host of the Ruthless podcast and former chief of staff to Senator Mitch McConnell. Annie, start us off here. The fact that the FBI is looking into Brennan and Comey now, when this declassified CIA report came out, people said, will prosecutions follow? We don't know if it'll be a prosecution, but it's an investigation at this point. Yeah,
this is certainly the logical next step from last week's news. And it does really underscore, I think, the extent to which this Russia investigation that occurred in 2017, I believe, has stayed under the president's skin and sort of in his craw. He has personally sued members of the Pulitzer Board for giving a Pulitzer Prize to the Washington Post and the New York Times, kind of surrounding on this topic. So I think this sort of move fits into this broader concern that the president has about this moment.
Josh, I talked to Ratcliffe about this declassified report last week. He said, look, this is the director of analysis. This is a person who's been at the CIA through several administrations and directors. He has full faith that this is an accurate report.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously new information, but it also corroborates what many of us who've been watching this since 2016 have known all along, which is you had nefarious actors within the intelligence community that were putting their thumb on the scale. I mean, recall just a trip down memory lane. It was Brennan himself was the one who was pushing then Speaker Ryan and then Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to try to issue a statement before the 2016 election alleging Russian interference on behalf of President Trump. Now, obviously, they refused to do that, which then became a big discussion in the Comey, all the Comey investigation and everything else. But this is what kicked it off. It was very, very clearly an inside campaign hatched up somewhere. But these folks were in the middle of it, and I think this investigation is a long time coming.
Donald Trump insisted, Francesca, all along that there was nothing to this Russia collusion investigation. It would appear that history has proven him correct, and then you have to go back and wonder, well, how'd this all get going in the first place?
And to pick up on what Annie was saying, I mean, just today we heard the president again bring up during his cabinet meeting the Russia. So this is clearly something that he continues to be upset about. And you were talking about the last presidential campaign as well. I mean, this was something that he brought up repeatedly on the campaign trail and has talked about ad nauseum. So to Annie's point, to hear now that this is something that would be under investigation, which again, this is breaking news, is not particularly surprising.
Again, this is the beginning of an investigation. It could be a long way from a prosecution. Might never happen, but it's breaking news for us tonight. All right, let's go back to the cabinet meeting because both of you were in there today. Josh, you and I weren't.
Maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
I was last night. I was in the BB meeting last night.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. Annie was in the cabinet meeting today. But you both talked to the president. You both got good quotes from him. Steve Witkoff, very optimistic that he might get a deal on Gaza. This is Francesca's wisdom last night, along with a couple of her colleagues, writing in USA Today about who would control security of Gaza if a deal is eventually struck. Netanyahu said Israel would have to retain control of security over Gaza rather than a complete state. I think the Palestinians should have all the powers to govern themselves, but none of the powers to threaten us, he said. That means a certain power, like overall security, will always remain in our hands. Now, that is a fact that no one in Israel will agree to anything else because we don't commit suicide. There was some talk that Israel didn't want to get bogged down in another occupation, security or otherwise, of Gaza. Looks like that's changed.
Yeah, and Netanyahu right now, as we speak, is at the White House. I believe he's still there. We know he came in to meet again with the president to talk about Gaza. And I think what Francesca's great question last night and her reporting is showing is this framework kind of firming up around what the United States, at least, is hoping a peace deal would look like. And of course, when Witkoff today in the cabinet meeting referenced a possibility of a pause in fighting for 60 days, he was also saying he hopes it's the beginning of the absolute end of fighting, so the pause would extend.
Did you get any sense, Francesca, of how the security arrangement might work? And I mean, Hamas has got to agree to something. I don't know if they agree to their demise or how it goes, but What did you get from that?
Actually asked the president last night if he was hoping to make a deal, if he thought one could be made in the room last night, if they essentially thought that there was anything that Israel still needed to agree to in this. And the president said that he thought that things were essentially going fine with the proposal for a ceasefire. With respect to the question I had asked last night, it was about a two-state solution and whether or not the president still thought that there could be an independent Palestinian state here. And what was really interesting about the exchange was that he directed the question to the Israeli prime minister and said, well, you have him sitting here. He could answer this age-old question. So the president didn't want to be the one to stipulate those terms. He wanted to hear what Bibi Netanyahu said, and it was the Israeli prime minister who then ends up answering that question.
Josh, I talked with an administration official last week who said that Hamas knows that there's no future for them in Gaza. The question is, what's the out for them? Do you put them on a ship like you did the PLO in 1982? Apparently, Hamas doesn't want the photo of the so-called perp walk of them leaving Gaza. So how do you come to an agreement with them that ends this war, gives Israel security, and allows Palestinian people to rebuild?
I don't think they're in a place of tremendous leverage at this point. I think they're sort of all out of cards. I think this is something that it's not surprising at all that Israel would want security assurances. It falls into the category of fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 80,000 times over 80 years, shame on me. I mean, that they are going to make assurances that it can't reconstitute itself and harm the Israeli people. That's a baseline deal. Where this whole thing ends, look, I think President Trump has had a remarkably pragmatic approach to this, where he has taken both sides, where he has a definitive opinion of who's in the right and who's in the wrong, but his goal is to try to drive towards an end solution. I think we are much closer now than we've been in decades.
Well, see, Witkoff is very optimistic about it. I want to quickly touch on Ukraine because Andy got the quote of the day from the president in the cabinet room when asked about Putin in Ukraine. Listen here.
I'm very unhappy with them. There's no reason for this. It's turned out to be tougher. We get a lot of thrown at us by Putin for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Everybody's swearing these days in Washington. But, I mean, he would. I think he held out hope that Putin might come around. I think he's probably said, look, I know Putin's not going to come around.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's so interesting because I was in the Oval Office for that meeting with Zelensky where the president, in that meeting, yes. And this is such a, almost, 100, not quite 180 degrees, but certainly 150 degree difference for the president. I mean, he certainly has had a journey with Vladimir Putin, and that journey is moving closer and closer towards the White House and the administration supporting Ukraine more robustly.
Give me 20 seconds each to finish this off here. Francesca?
While he may feel that Putin is tapping him along or whatever he said in the past about it, John, he still hasn't put sanctions on Russia. It's unclear if that's something he would do. When he was asked about that today, he said he'd consider the legislation in Congress, but he still hasn't done that.
Josh?
Look, I think to understand President Trump's foreign policies, to understand the modus operandi that he takes to all of these things, he takes the end goal first, and that's peace. And then the dynamic atmosphere that informs the tactics that he uses are not, that's not irrelevant to the process. I think there's a whole bunch of foreign policy establishment in Washington, D.C. forever that's just, you just say what the tactics are and you stick to them. It's not the way he views the world, obviously. And I think you're seeing this executed in a way that gives us a good chance.
I mean, he's done a lot of tough negotiations in real estate. He knows that, here's my goal. Now, what's the path to get there? So we'll see. Thanks, folks, for joining us.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.